Switch off your mobile phones. We are about to begin our session. It's a book launch. Title: Gender, Politics and Performance in South Asia. Compiled by Sheema, Kermani, Asif, Farrukhi and Kamran Asdar. The panelists are Jamil, Ahmed and Andrea, Backhaus and Shayma, Saiyid. And moderator is Rumana, Husain. Rumana Husain is trained as a graphic designer. She has had an evolving career from teaching art to making fabric toys and quilted artwork, innovative school head, teacher trainer, book illustrator, writer and journalist. Rumana has presented over 30 programs on art and architecture for TV1. She is director on the board of the Children's Literature Festival and General Secretary of the Karachi Conference Foundation. Rumana Hassan.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, I'd like Kamran to settle. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's a formidable job that I have. You can see all the, renowned panelists. So it's a very happy occasion because gender, politics and performance in South Asia, it has been published by Oxford University Press. It is edited by Sheema Kermani, Dr. Asif Farrukhi and Dr. Kamran Asdar sitting right here. Tehreek-e-Niswa held a conference in Karachi in December 2010 on its 31st anniversary, and this was co-sponsored by the Oxford University Press. And the book that has come out, which has been edited by these three persons, it's the papers that were presented at that conference. And 2010, and now we are in 2015, so we are extremely happy that eventually the book is in our hands. In fact, the one I had got was not as, yes, okay, I had a dummy, but here is the actual book. So please take a look, and it's well worth a read. If you are interested in the subject, then do pick up this book. Thank you, Kamran. Yes. Buy it. By picking up, मैं polite जुमला वो कर रही थी. अच्छा. So as it is obvious from the title, the agenda of the conference was to rethink the issue of gender, of performance and politics in South Asia. But before we begin our discussion, I would like to introduce the esteemed panel to the audience. It is a coincidence that three of us sitting here are part of the IIM Karachi consortium, namely Sheema Kermani, Dr. Asif Farrukhi and myself. The consortium was recently formed, in fact, on the 24th of December 2014, and the IIM Karachi consortium is a campaign for peace through social and cultural issues. So I'll begin the introductions, and I'll begin with Sheema Kermani. Classical dancer, teacher, theatre practitioner, choreographer, human rights and peace activist, but in particular women's rights activist. Sheema founded the Tehreek-e-Niswa Cultural Action Group, which she heads. It is an organization dedicated to improving women's rights in Pakistan by raising awareness through the use of performing arts. Sheema studied fine arts at Croydon College of Art in London, and I'm sure that she brings in those aesthetics with her in her work. She has received several national and international awards, and she's also appeared in a few select television plays. Dr. Asif Farrukhi, over there, a medical doctor, but only by profession. He graduated from the Dow Medical College in Karachi and Harvard University, USA, but he has a passion for literature. As you all know, he's co-founder of the KLF. He's an author, editor, translator, and literary critic. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. Dr. Farrukhi has 7 published collections of short fiction and 2 of critical essays. He regularly contributes to the English press. 2 of his adaptations in Urdu have been staged in Karachi. He is editor of Dunya Zad, which is an Urdu literary journal of new writings and contemporary issues. For his distinguished work, he was awarded the Prime Minister's Literary Award by the Pakistan Academy of Letters and the Tamgha-e-Imtiaz by the Government of Pakistan. Dr. Kamran Asdar, who insists that I should only say one line about him, but I won't. He is Associate Professor of Anthropology at the University of Texas, Austin, where he also directs the South Asia Institute. He has conducted research in Mexico, Egypt, and Pakistan. His publications focus on gender and sexuality, health, popular culture, urban issues, and labor history. He's the author of Planning the Family in Egypt, New Bodies, New Selves. He guest edited Urban Margins, Envisioning the Contemporary Global South, and has also co-edited Gendering Urban Space and Comparing Cities, Middle East and South Asia, which I have read, I must say. A wonderful book. His most recent book is Communism in Pakistan, Politics and Class Activism, 1947 to 1972. We have a guest from Bangladesh, Dr. Jamil Ahmed, a professor at the Department of Theatre and Music, University of Dhaka, which he founded in 1994. That is the department, and served as its chair until 1997. He obtained his MA in Theatre Studies from the University of Warwick, UK, and his PhD from the University of Dhaka. Dr. Jamil Ahmed has taught at various colleges and universities in the UK and USA and held numerous workshops on theatre in Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Germany, and Pakistan. He has over 50 research articles to his credit and several book-length publications. He has directed over 20 plays and is currently working on a book on the theatre of Bangladesh and another one on applied theatre. Now this introduction appears in the book, so perhaps he has already completed those books. Yes? Okay. Andrea Backhaus, is that? Yeah, Backhaus, studied media and cultural science, after which she undertook a 2-year training at the Axel Springer Journalism School in Berlin. During that time, she worked on stories in the Middle East and soon started to concentrate on Egypt. Here, she covered the struggle of journalists, activists, artists for freedom of expression under then President Mohammad Morsi, and in June 2013 she moved to Cairo. As a freelance journalist, she writes about Egypt and the neighboring countries for German newspapers and magazines. She has reported on the ouster of Morsi, the following repression by the military, and the agitation against foreign journalists. Last but not the least, Shayma Saiyid trained under Maharaj Kathak in Lahore for over 7 years, starting in the year that General Zia's dictatorship began. Moving to Karachi in the mid-80s, she continued Kathak under Nighat Chaudhry and Odissi under Sheema Kermani. In the first public performance of dance by women in Pakistan in almost a decade, on the night of Benazir Bhutto's maiden address in December 1988, Shayma performed Odissi with Sheema Kermani's group at the Arts Council of Pakistan. A few months after that, she left to attend college in the US, where she studied choreography and modern dance. She has performed and choreographed for the Grinnell Dance Troupe and trained in modern dance at various institutions while pursuing her MIA at Columbia. Shayma has performed in Pakistan, USA, Canada, and UK, and has explored teaching science through dance for the Children's Literature Festival held last year in Karachi, and hopefully again this year at the end of this month. Okay, so Sheema, I begin with you. In your paper, the magical 31 years it is called, it's the first which is included in this book. You begin by discussing the question of cultural identity, pertinent since it is something that has been under discussion in our country ever since 1947, and you have attempted to define it in one way or the other ever since you started Tehreek-e-Niswa in 1979. Could you briefly, for the benefit of those in the audience who may not be too familiar with Tehreek's work, relate why there is a need for this cultural activism in Pakistan?
It's a very difficult question to answer briefly. However, I have, since the time I acquired any kind of consciousness, I have felt that art and politics are totally related, and to separate them, because for me politics is not only voting for a party in power or not in power. Politics is about life, about living, about the food we get to eat, the shelter that we have, the clothes that we wear, and the jobs that we can do or not do. So politics to me has been a very wide and all-encompassing issue about life and living, and so is art. And in a society where where there is a great taboo set on art, where there is a great taboo, as we all know, on dance, on music, on singing. The very fact that one is doing that becomes a political and a subversive activity, especially in times of military dictatorships which we've had for such a long time. So when I started Tehreek-e-Niswa, I did start it as an organization which was meant to bring women's issues to the forefront, but very soon I, with my colleagues, discovered that it is actually art which gives us the courage, which gives us the energy, which gives us the vibrancy to tackle subjects which are so difficult to talk about. So to me, art is and creativity is what makes me strong. It's what gives us the courage to continue to struggle against oppression in all forms.
Okay. Thank you for that. Dr. Jamil Ahmed, you have also discussed identity by raising questions in your paper titled Performing to Represent the Nation, Seeking a Line of Flight in Contemporary Pakistani Theatre. You say that, if at all, can a theatre idiom derived from folk and traditional sources, forms and performance practices narrate a nation? How can such a theatre retain contemporaneity and represent Pakistan so as to stand for, act for, and make present again the notion of Pakistaniness? Would you kindly elaborate on this, please?
I think I'll just keep it here. It keeps slipping. I raise this question because I'm straddled as I stand here. I have been a citizen of Pakistan since 1971. A question if you address and answer in Indian visa document that you had earlier held Pakistani citizenship, your visa will not be granted. So there I write, no, I did not hold any other citizenship. So you see, the crux of the problem is, who am I? And if I look back now in Bangladesh, if I say that I was a Pakistani at one time before 1971, then of course I'll be a Jamati, an Islamist. But because right now cultural nationalism is so strong. So when you ask about what makes an identity, what makes a human identity, right now print media and literature and anything, it makes so obvious that identity is national. So if you ask somebody, then that person would at one point say, I'm from India, or I'm from Pakistan, I'm from Bangladesh. So we cannot think out of this box, out of thinking of national identity, out of thinking in terms of national identity. What I'm trying to discuss in this paper is that national identity thus described is very much like the notion of a tree, a majoritarian trunk, which has a major identity of majority of the population. For Pakistan is the Muslims, for India is the Hindus, for Sri Lanka is the Buddhists. So from this majoritarian trunk, you have branches branching out, or you have shrubs and other bushes spread all around, which may not be part of this majoritarian trunk. So I was first of all looking at it and discussing and looking into other examples of this identity being built through theater. In Bengal, we have had this Swadeshi Jatra, which sought first Bengali identity and then Indian identity. And we also have had other identities. I myself directed plays where I sought an identity which would incorporate perhaps also the fact that I am a Bengali and a Muslim. Not necessarily, which wouldn't make me anywhere outside. So I looked at the Karbala legend and directed a play on that too. Now I say all this because having traveled this, I'm looking back into the history and having traveled through this space, I think we are better expressed if you think of a national theater where you have Platos, 1,000 Platos, as Delusion Guattari would perhaps say, 1,000 Platos interconnected by lines, rhizomic, interconnected by lines of flight. 1,000 Platos say of Platos of gender identity, for example, Platos of identity in terms of age, or identity in terms of your thought process, or whatever. So, can we think of a national identity not as a tree, but as interconnected and not hierarchical, but horizontally interconnected plateaus of different and various ideas, some of them contesting each other, but each in dialogue, not excluding anybody. So and that is what I really would like to see. And this was a paper which was addressed in a conference way back again, before 1910. I think it was 2007. So it goes back there. And so there I was asked about national theater and folk or traditional medium. So that's the history of that. But then, so in terms of this paper, I also look into 4 or 5 major Indian directors like Ratan Thyam and others, and also see how they are building the notion of the Indian nation. How are they narrating the Indian nation through theater, which is not monolithic, which is diverse and varied. So perhaps that kind of artistic vision, that kind of flight, that kind of mental map, where you can think of variety, difference, hybridity, heterogeneity, and not think of a monolithic line, is what I would talk of a national identity, through theater perhaps.
Thank you. I would just like to read a little, a few lines from his paper, because can you even imagine this here in Pakistan? Dr. Jamil writes, in distant villages of Bangladesh, I have seen performers in the role of Allah, and no one among the spectators murmured a word of protest against this blasphemy. I have met a number of performers who have said in the most matter-of-fact manner that for them the Prophet is the same as Krishna and Fatima the same as Sita. In these meetings with remarkable men and women, I saw that these performers did not seek to erase, evade, sidestep, or overlook Islam, but confronted the ideological instrument of religion, embraced it with love and respect, and had the courage to employ their performances as acts of plural reflexivity and active agencies of change, representing the eye by which culture sees itself and the drawing board on which creative actors sketch out what they believe to be more apt or interesting designs for living. This is Turner, 1987. So this is something that, you know, we can never dream of, perhaps. It's that different. But tell me, Dr. Jamil, about your experience of coming to Karachi and directing 1001 Nights, 1001 Thi Raatein, which was a very, I should say, enchanting performance by Tehreek-e-Niswa. This was when? This was in
97, 98?
98. In 98, yes.
1998.
So tell me, because you know, you have also written in that particular paper, you have mentioned about how when you went out in Karachi, you were being driven around and you saw this male gaze which bothered you, how men look at women, how they are staring at women. And I believe before you directed this particular play, you had offered to direct a play which would be based on the Prophet's, what do you say, the, not Hijrat, lekin Arsh.
Karbala myth.
नहीं करबला नहीं मेराज. So that is what you had said, that you know they could do a play on that. तो आज शीमा यहाँ बैठी ना होती अगर वो हो गया होता play. But anyway, so let's talk about 1001 Thi Raatein and your experience.
Okay, but before that, just one little comment about something not being possible in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, but being impossible in Bangladesh. You see, that was the expectation about people in Bangladesh too, till they went out to the villages, till I went out.
Right.
So my credit is just that I was the first person to go out to the village, live there, and document and see those performances. Others, people just wrote on what they heard, and it was scattered. Those things were there, but they're scattered. So it was not known. I'm sure, maybe, such things do exist in Pakistan too. You just have to look. And perhaps in some remote corner
Very
somewhere.
doubtful, extremely doubtful.
would,
आप लोग बताइए, audience.
Well, I would anyway. So you are from Pakistan. You'd know better. I would start with the skepticism. As for 1001 Nights, it was a memorable experience with a group of people in Pakistan here, actors. Sheema and others over there who put on a performance, and they put on their energy, their vision and everything together. It was a rough ride at times, but it ended in a kind of magical moment for me too. Not the first night, it was quite a disaster. But the nights following that, because the space that Sheema managed to get was Alliance's space, which is an inner courtyard. And the spectators could sit in the veranda, and the performers could perform in this open space. Yes, it was a magical night, but what it made me see is that if you can call it an Islamic worldview, where the one thing that I clearly remember is repeatedly inscribed in 1001 Nights and many stories. This is what I think. A wise man narrating a story and then giving his version, his idea of what should be. And he ends up saying that this is what I think, but Allah knows best. Now, I remember this distinctly because I don't hear this being said anywhere, wherever I am, from the United States to Bangladesh to Japan and other places. Especially because I'm a Muslim, I don't see my ulama, my religious leaders saying this, that this is what I believe about the Quran, but Allah knows best, because Allah is omnipotent. I don't know better than Allah. But every time what is happening is you're mobilizing a meaning in the name of Allah. I think that is blasphemous, because thereby you are challenging the omnipotence of the Lord. So that is what I think is the most important thing about the 1001 Nights, that their stories are so diverse and there's so many people. It's a cacophony at times. It's a piece of 1,000 voices and diverse opinions and many different faces. At times very patriarchal, very hegemonic, at times very open, challenging hegemony. A story like the historic fart. I mean, like, if you read the story over there, perhaps it'll take time. So, you know, it is very satirical at times, where it challenges the notion of politics as struggle for power. It challenges patriarchy. It challenges the state. And again, it is subsumed under the notions of patriarchy. It's subsumed under the notion of a state. So those voices and multiplicity of 1001 Nights was fascinating me. So we could not get all those stories together. But the structure of 1001 Nights is what fascinated me most, is that, you see, you have an outer structure of Shahryar and Shahrazad telling each other, Shahryar telling Shahrazad stories. So here you have a woman telling a man a story, and of course a storyteller, Shahrazad, telling Shahryar a story. And this is the potency of a story which can change a man. A man who was killing women, at the end of this 1001 Nights, is changed, is transformed. So this is what a performer can do. This is what a performance can do. This is what a story can do. A story in performance. Now that is the outer construct. But in that, each night, as Shahrazad tells a story, it's a story, and sometimes story within a story and within a story and within a story. And each night, she holds the story and she suspends the story at a point that Shahryar is forced to listen to the story for the next morning and suspends her death. What a miraculous performer she is. And she's a woman. And she's from an Islamic culture. And you say that women do not have potency and do not have voice. So once you discover that, I was fascinated, and I wouldn't have discovered that if Sheema and her colleagues had not insisted that perhaps we should do this. And having done that, of course, one discovered a different Pakistan. I hear it in India too, and many friends of mine in Bangladesh too believe that Pakistan is a kind of monolithic place, a hegemonic place where you just have all the males going around the street, and you hardly see women, and it's kind of very Islamist, and don't go there, Jamil, your life is in danger and stuff, and your visa may not be granted if you go to the United States, and stories like that, all over Pakistan, Bangladesh and India. But then that is important. Beyond the state, you meet faces, human faces. And you meet, you touch, you argue, you quarrel, you love, you hate, and you bridge friendships, you make friends. And maybe you don't remember, but those brief moments that you make contact with another human being is what is most precious in life, perhaps. And that, across the border, across an enemy territory, a territory where others would not perhaps dare, and having made this play, I discovered a Pakistan which I had not before 1971. I even refused to speak Urdu before 1971. But it is Ek Hazar and this play, and having seen Karachi, and this wonderful Arabian Sea that you have over here, it has given me a notion of life which I would not have had learned had I not been here, and had I not met people, and had I not been here. So yes, even if I'm not given up a visa to India, or perhaps more importantly to the United States, I would come here 1,000 times for my 1,000 nights. Thank you.
Thank you. The Arabian Sea is also the envy of the other cities of Pakistan. So, Asif, Dr. Asif Farrukhi. So you've had a long association with Tehreek-e-Niswa. With reference to your contribution in the book, The Touch of a Lion's Paw on My Back, an introductory note on the life and works of Amna Nazli, you have mentioned her play Doshala. If I remember correctly, it was performed at this conference. It's an engaging story about an old lady who washes bodies of women before they are buried. Please share your views, Asif, regarding gender, politics, and performance in connection with the little-known Amna Nazli.
That's a very interesting but
And could you
probably a
also
tall
tell us,
order.
Yeah. Now, could you also tell us something about, her story on early child marriage?
I'll try to do all of these things in the 3 minutes that I think I should speak. First, I want to...
We have time.
All right. Maybe I would like to give some of the time to the other speakers. But I want to mention briefly about my association with Sheema Kermani and Tehreek-e-Niswa, because I am not, unlike some of the other people, a performer or a theatre person as such. So I became interested in what Sheema was doing through my work in public health in Kachi Abadis, and how I saw at very close quarters how Sheema was using theatre as a means of creating awareness, especially in women and underprivileged groups such as youth, and making sure that they are able to understand or get a better grip of the kind of possibilities or awakenings which although they do exist in the city, but those things were not there. So that was a very, very interesting aspect, and maybe Sheema, that has not been documented enough. That was a very important part of your work which you did in that city. Then I was sort of challenged or started working with Sheema in putting together scripts, and I worked very closely with Sheema and Jamil Saab and the team in getting the Urdu version of Ek Hazar Ek Thi Raatein. So that was how I took on the magic of the theatre and learned what it means and what kind of wonders theatre can do. So it was a great something which I could learn. That's one thing. I was drawn when we were planning this conference on writing and talking about Amna Nazri, because on one hand she's a neglected playwright in Urdu. And on one hand we say that there is not enough drama or theatre in Urdu, and yet the few iconoclastic or people who have stood against the stream, they have not been given due recognition. So that was the interesting thing, and working with Sheema, we had a chance of staging her play for the first time in, was it 30 years or 40 years, and Amna Nazri, a generally neglected figure, how her play was staged, and that play sounded so contemporary. So she was dealing with women, oppression, lack of awareness, opportunities which have been denied to them in the name of religion and patriarchy. That was a very, very interesting experience, and that's what moved me to write that piece in this paper, in this book.
Asif, you also translated Tawfiq al-Hakim's Sultan Ka Faisla for us.
Yes, I did. Yeah. Again, that was something else, Sheema, which you sort of pushed or coaxed me into doing. This was an Arabian play, Sultan Ka Faisla. Sorry? Yes, I'm putting it mildly. I'm trying to be well-behaved and decent, right, Sheema? At least in public, we have to do that. So this was a very interesting place in which the play in which the Sultan of Egypt discovers that he was actually still a slave, and there was this dancing woman who ultimately could buy the Sultan because he was for sale. So this very interesting and very challenging play, this was performed, and everybody thought that, you know, this could not really be a translation. We are using the theme of translation to as an excuse, because this play is obviously what else but contemporary Pakistan. So this piece of Egyptian history became alive. It had dance, some very sarcastic notes, a lot of good acting, a lot of preparation. So this was a very, very, should I say, eye-opening process in which we all learned from each other. And I wish that we could get back to some of those plays again.
Yes, that was, I think, also performed at the Alliance. I remember.
That's right.
That's right. So we come to. Are you finished? No.
I'm finished, but
yeah. Okay. No, I would like to ask Kamran Asdar, because, you know, he has also a contribution in the book about Sara Shagufta and the politics of gender and class in his paper, The Other Side of the Tracks. And in the same paper, you discuss at length the television play Umraujan Ada that Geo Television had telecast in 2003. Now, the choice of play is an intriguing one, in your own words, made to argue for women's liberation and religious tolerance. It will be interesting for our audience here if you would draw parallels between Sara and Umrao, between fact and fiction, between, let's say, the politics of class and gender?
Thank you. You know, when we teach in grad classes, we constantly say, once we can do anything with the text because after writing, the author is dead. So the point is that I can't be the author and be analyze my own work.
Why not? I mean, there is quite a bit behind, you know, which is not
No,
written.
but thank you so much, and thank you Oxford University Press and Sheema and Asif, especially Sheema, for sticking with the project, which we thought when the three of us met ages ago, and some of us are here who remember at Sheema's apartment thinking about the conference, and then that materialized, and then, you know, and Jamil Saab came as well, and, you know, and then this book, so it's a long journey, and I must congratulate and really it's kudos to Sheema and her energy that she kept up with it. I think Asif and I had, you know, moments of sort of vanishing.
long
Yeah. And she pulled us together. Kya kar rahe ho tum log? Yo, karoge ya nahi karoge? So yes, of course.
Thank you.
Just to say, and this is a moment of some nostalgia and memory, but Sheema may not remember this, but you know, growing up in Karachi and knowing Sheema as a political activist in the late 70s, early 80s, and not only in terms of theatre, but in terms of labor politics and generally progressive politics. And the Tehreek-e-Nisma, one of the earlier plays, was done in Rex Theatre, and we as college students worked with that. And then Aurat, the Safdar Hashmi script came, and she performed it. And a lot of us were coming together and working with her. And I remember talking to Sheema and Khalid, Ahmed and others, we were Mansoor Saiyid, and we were trying to bring a group together. And so, which eventually didn't happen. What happened is that Dastak was formed, and somehow Sheema was not part of it, and that's a history of the left that we need to write someday. But that was the first meeting with Mansoor, yourself, I was there, Khalid was there, and there were others, Aftab Poshni was there, and then, so there's an old history here of those of us who have lived a little while in this wonderful city of ours by the sea, as Jamil Saab sort of very poignantly reminded us. Thank you, Rumana. I'll take a few minutes. The question is this, the question for me in bringing these two different strands together was that there is a lot of politics, especially liberal politics, feminist politics around sexual freedom. But on what terms does that freedom come is also a class-based argument. And Sara Shagufta becomes this iconic person who lives her life the way she liked to. And some of us here may have known her very well, and some of us here may have known her in a peripheral manner or just seen her perform as a poet. But you know, there are people in this room who remember her as a person, as someone, people like Sheema and others, Atiya may be here, Zahida Sahiba hain, aur bhi log hain. They knew her as a living being and as a vibrant and sometimes unpredictable, but always, you know, creative person. And so her own life was, but she came from the other side of tracks. And so her, the risk she took in terms of her intellectual life, but personal life, is always remembered with a kind of a problematic adjective. And so I was trying to think of that. Whereas with Umrao Jan, it's safe. Umrao Jan, as it was redone for, as this very expensive production, the first long play that Geo did, and Umrao, of course, is a courtesan, and she has certain kinds of sexual freedom, but we do not condemn her as we condemned Sara Shagufta, because she comes to us through this fantasy and fictionalized world of the novel, or now in the early 20th century through the television screen in the safety of our middle class living rooms. And of course, also perhaps there is always this idea that she came from good stock. Remember, Umrad was kidnapped, and she always came from good stock. So the point is, so even if she is sleeping with a different parma every night, she is somehow allowed to do that, whereas Sara is not. So eventually on June 4th, Sara, whether she committed suicide or not, passed away with Khotolan Heather's book in her hands and agarbatti dusre haath mein thi unki, aur wo Drigg Road ke tracks cross kar rahi thi. Drigg Road is a place where, of course, certain kinds of people live and others don't, and what her own history was and stuff. So it's also about Karachi, its class, but also our own hypocrisy about when we talk about freedoms, on what terms those freedoms will come to us is also going to be determined by a certain class. So even our politics of liberation and progressiveness is sort of bound up in certain kinds of privileges. So that was the issue. And on the religious freedom thing, of course, in Umrao, the interesting thing is that when Umrao sort of gets lost and then sort of finds herself in a small town, it's the Maulvi or the Imam of the town that says ki beta tum ye apna jo kaam karti ho, tum apna kaam karo. Or and I think in the early years of Musharraf, that kind of tolerance and thing, and there's a modern what was it called, liberated Islam, or what was it called, tolerated enlightened Islam,
enlightened moderation.
So that was allowed in Geo. So it was also a sort of a kind of a thinking about a particular moment of our cultural history. But one could imagine that in our own history, at least in the history of Awadh and Ashraf and all that kind of stuff, that there were moments where the Kota and the mosque could coexist. And this is the kind of thing I think Jamil Saab is also saying. The whole Baul tradition in Bengal, and which was part of Pakistan as well. I'm not sort of trying to reclaim it. I would never want to do it, and he knows my politics on 71. But the Baul tradition was there, and Mati Aur Moina is by our late friend Tariq Masood, sort of talks about this in very visual terms, perhaps a bit more romanticized. But the point is that the idea that this Kabir and the sort of the Allah and Krishna are sort of the same. And it's a very old tradition of Bengal, but also of the kind of music and theatre, popular music traditions in Balochistan, in Punjab. It's not that we don't have it, in our parts of the world. The minstrel tradition is very much part of that. So I think there is much work to be done because we don't go there. Sorry.
Thank you. Andrea, you've been working in Egypt. If, like I said, the title of the book is Gender, Politics and Performance in South Asia. I think we would like to hear from you about Egypt. And Kamran here has also worked in Egypt, so perhaps...
Lived in Egypt.
Yes, you could...
Yeah, I think I would just connect to Sheema, what she was saying in the beginning, that if you talk about politics, it's not only politics. Is that loud enough?
Yeah.
But it goes down to every aspect of society, and it really, so in Egypt in particular, after the revolution, it was not a revolution in a political sense only. It really touched so many aspects of society and arts and culture. And what I find really striking still is how the younger artists are searching for their own identities as well. It's about what kind of Egyptian am I? How do I deal with religion? How do I deal with a dictatorship? Because now we have another dictatorship. It's just changing hats all the time. And this is really striking. So at the same time, what I find really interesting is how the younger people would use the public space in order to fight for their own freedom. To create a more liberal society. It's not so much about religion, it's more about tradition in Egypt, I would say. And they would risk their lives, and they still do. They did under Mubarak, they did under Morsi, and they now do it under Al-Sisi. And they would go down to Tahrir Square, and they would do graffiti paintings. They would create spaces for performance arts as well, or underground movies, whatever. And it's a very vibrant scene. And I think it shows a lot. It shows a lot, and it shows how the whole mindset is changing. It takes a long time. It's a generation conflict as well, and it's all happening at the same time. So this is really interesting to see, I guess.
So would you say the arts, whether it's visual arts or performing arts, literature, it thrives under such regimes or under such situations?
Yes.
There's, it's kind of ironical, but would you say there is, a lot to say and do and find ways of expression.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, and maybe that's a bit similar to Pakistan, you would have, I mean, it's not really touching like the majority of the society, right? So it's only like a small percentage of people that are able to really do arts and performance arts and painting and whatever. But still they would address, they really start to address like a larger part of the population. But they don't have any infrastructure. I mean, the government didn't care about arts and culture at all. Just like for some more like elitist kind of things, you know, more like Western shows. Mubarak was very much into that, to show ballet, you know, and to show this like high cultural things. But this is not so interesting for the Egyptians themselves. I mean, they really want to express the fears they have, the frustration they have, because it's really frustrating for them right now. I mean, it's like after 4 years of the revolution, I mean, nothing really has changed at all. It like changed to the worse. I mean, so and they do express that. But it's hard. I mean, the freedom of expression in Egypt right now is below zero. I mean, there is no freedom at all. So yeah, they risk their lives. That's what they do.
Okay, thank you.
Rumana,
yes,
sorry, before
yes.
you go, I'd just like to pick on one thing that Andrea has said. Because I think that culture and art is not restricted only to the kind of cultural activity that we describe as in theaters or in auditoriums or in exhibition halls. I think art is actually practiced by people all the time, and all the people, you know, mothers when they sing lullabies to their daughters, that for me is art as well. Women who are making embroideries, I mean, that for me is art as well. So it's not only about cultural activity, you said it's restricted to a certain section. I think art is actually, you know, when we have urs, at various mazars,
shrines.
Everybody sings and dances, everybody recites poetry, so it is actually part of people's life all the time.
Yeah, I think it's like about creating a space where you can like express your like, you know, free thoughts, and this is like so crucial, and you can do that in various forms.
So with Shayma, I want to discuss about dance, okay? Because in your quest for learning Kathak as well as the other forms of dance, you've had the privilege to tutor under some famous dancers, classical dancers, and you know, with your education in the West.
Can I just comment? Actually, I'm sorry,
Yes.
I was a bit embarrassed with the long introduction, and I don't want to hear more about myself. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the papers in the book, if that's okay.
All right, that's okay, but I just wanted your opinion. I mean, how do you feel that ever since 1988, you think anything has changed now for dance in particular?
Yes, I think it's changed a lot dramatically, and it was fascinating, this book. For example, Claire Pamon's article was very interesting. I first wanted to talk about, I mean, certainly it's opened up a lot, I think, and I think that's great. And even to have these types of discussions is just really very exciting, and I'm very honored to be sitting here. I just wanted to say about Kamran Asdar Ali's book that, you know, I don't agree with what you said about the difference is that she wasn't born into good stock versus Sarah was born into good stock. I think the issue is that Sarah was not born into good stock, Umrao was born into good stock. I don't think that's the issue at all. I think it's that Umrao didn't, I think the other issue you raised was the agency, that Umrao didn't have agency. She was forced into this position, she was kidnapped. That's why we feel sympathy for her. Whereas it's harder for the you know, general, it's more of a cultural leap to be, for a woman who chooses to be promiscuous, whereas a woman who is forced into it because of being kidnapped at a young age. So I think the class issue there. Well, the other is, you mentioned the language politics. Again, I think I don't agree with this, because Urdu is a national language. I mean, I don't think there's anything hegemonic about performing a play that is a classic. If you perform Shakespeare, it's not that they're inserting hegemony on top of us if we go and if Geo
Police are sitting next to you. Why did they want to liberate themselves?
No, I'm talking about this is 2003 Pakistan. I mean, Urdu as far as Punjabis, Bengalis, Balochistan, Balochi में अब आप मुझे कोई literature दिखाते जो उस type का हो तो certainly I think Urdu is the original, the first prose fiction novel written in the subcontinent was Urdu, I believe, or Farsi. Bengali.
We are now going to this politics of language, you see, and that is where language comes in. And I think I completely agree. No, I understand, but when you bring up history and you say the first language was first novel is in Urdu, Bangla, English, whatever. I mean, you see, you're.
Kuratulen Heather, is that the one? No, okay. Well, doesn't matter. The point is that
the 19th century is littered with Bengali novels.
And Asdar was based, sorry if I may say, was based on an original text which was written in Persian, not in Urdu. And it was written by somebody called Husain and Kuratulen Heather translated a version of that.
Okay, so.
But your point is well taken. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think, because it's such a well-written novel. Oscar Wilde said it doesn't matter if it's a good book or a bad book. What matters is it a well-written book. Umrao Jan is one of those plays. Unfortunately, I wish there was somebody who could tell Sara Shagufta's story, in the form of that beautiful play. Manto has told stories like that about characters like Sara Shagufta. And his plays were televised by Jio around the same time that Umrao Janada in the 2003. Sarmad Sehbai directed many little Manto short plays which were on TV at the same time. So, but otherwise, I thought it was a fascinating, and it was great.
No worries.
Okay. And then my other...
Yes, go on.
Well, just about Claire Pamment, I thought in that sense I do agree with her language politics angle there. I think the Punjabi is, just because it's in Punjabi, there is a bias against this vulgarity if it's done in Punjabi, and if it's done in English or then there isn't that bias. So I agree with her, and it's really fascinating. I think. Musharraf, it's a little bit unfair to say that Musharraf banned it. All Musharraf did was ban it from the arts councils. He didn't ban it from being performed. He just said, don't do it in the arts councils.
This is about the Punjabi dancers in Lahore. They were performing at the Alhambra, right? Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, just can I just add on one sentence? Like you say, it is Musharraf did not ban it outright. In the same way, Rabindra Sangeet, songs by Tagore, were not banned by the government of Pakistan. From 62 to 68. You see, what happened is that the ban from Radio Pakistan. But the effect is such that anyone singing it would be picked up by the police. So you have this official record and you have what happens beneath. If you don't take into cognizance of this entire discourse, not only the written discourse, then you really don't know South Asia. You see? So that's another problem. I'm sorry, but it's important to wedge this in also. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's official versus. The self-loathing that's evident, that is played out in Claire Pamment's article that she talks about. I think it was also evident in this lawsuit, in this case around this lawsuit around dancer. It was this production Anarkali that was initially performed here using Pakistani dancers, and then it was sent to America, and Pakistani dancers were omitted. And this was a Pakistani government production that traveled all over the US. And they didn't feel that Pakistani dancers, and I think this is sort of the same self-loathing, they didn't feel that Pakistani dancers were good enough to be put on the international stage. And so they hired Indian-American dancers for a Pakistani government production, and there was a lawsuit about this, over copyright, but this issue was mentioned. And so I just thought I'd throw that in because it's sort of, in that same Musharraf era, and I just think that was not something that we should be proud of.
That's right. Yeah, thank you for that, Shayma. I think since we just have a few minutes now, we'll take questions, perhaps 3 questions. Yes, please.
Thank you. This is not a question, it's a few inputs. Yesterday, one of the keynote speakers said that literature and creative arts are under threat. Let me assure you that they are not under threat only from Muslim extremists. They are under threat from very senior organized people. There's a very senior banker who was even tipped to be a caretaker prime minister of Pakistan. His PRO came to me and said, the banker wants to organize a cultural festival in his compound for his compatriots from all over Asia. So I invited one of your compilers, and there's no prize for guessing who it is. And she came to see the place. And the man came down and said, look here, I don't want any singing and dancing girls here. I'm talking about a man who was a senior most banker and who was tipped to be the Prime Minister of Pakistan. About 6 years ago, my school, where I worked as an administrator, was organizing its Golden Jubilee. Once again, we tried various options, and finally I said, let's have a dance recital by Sheema Kermani. They said, no singing and dancing on the school stage. Finally, Sheema did a play which was extremely engrossing, extremely, had a very strong message. But this is the kind of attitude, this is the kind of mindset we all have. So not just blame the extremists, the Islamists. Let's look inwards. How do we look at literature? How do we look at creative arts?
Shayma, would you like to?
Well, I mean, Anwar Abbas Sahib, what he has said is absolutely correct.
Yes.
That this is kind of ingrained in the psyche of so many Pakistani Muslim men that dance and music is, should not take place. And there is no differentiation between any kind of between this being an art form or this being purely for titillation, which I think are, one needs to see the difference. And as you mentioned, I mean, I was there when this happened. Anwar Abbas Sahib himself invited me to meet the president of the State Bank of Pakistan. These were his words. Gana bajana nahi hoga. So, I mean, this is what one has seen and faced in all these 35, 40 years that one has been involved in this. But to end on another note, I'm still alive and I'm still dancing. So
that's right. Thank goodness for that. Yes, anyone else? Ji. Fatma.
सारा शगुफ्ता का और उमराव जान का मवाजना किया गया। मैं ये सवाल कर रही हूँ कि क्या उमराव जान जिस दौर में थी उस वक्त शरीफजादे तहजीब सीखने कोठे पे जाया करते थे और प्रोस्टिट्यूशन जो होता था वो उसके अपने कुछ क़वायद व ज़वाबित थे। आजकल ये हो रहा है कि हम पहले ही बहुत कंफ्यूज हो रहे हैं कि हर शायरा उमराव जान बनने की कोशिश कर रही है, तो क्या फ्रीडम ऑफ सेक्स प्रोस्टिट्यूट के लिए, शायरा के लिए, राइटर के लिए एक जैसा होना चाहिए?
देखिए, पहली बात तो ये कि मैं मुआजना नहीं कर रहा था। अगर आप पर्चा पढ़ें तो उसमें वो मुआजना नहीं है। एक लिखने का तरीका है, हम मुख्तलिफ़ चीज़ों को लाते हैं और उनको एक जगह रखते हैं ताकि जो कारी है वो उसको समझे, लेकिन उसका ये नहीं होता कि एक जो किरदार है वो दूसरे किरदार के बिल्कुल हम पल्ला है या बराबर है। ये मेरा इरादा नहीं था। अगर इस तरह का कोई तासुर मिल रहा है तो मैं कहूँगा कि मेरा पर्चा पढ़िए, ये बात नहीं है। मैं सिर्फ ये कहना चाह रहा था जो हमारे यहाँ मुनाफ़क़त है इस चीज़ के बारे में, ख़ास तौर पे हम बात करते हैं आज़ादी निस्वां की और ہمیں جو ہے جنسی آزادی ہونی چاہیے، لیکن مختلف لوگ جو اس کا اظہار کرتے ہیں اپنی زندگی میں ان کو بغیر بہت مختلف طریقے سے جو ہے وہ ایکسیپٹنس ملتی ہے. کچھ لوگوں کو کہا جاتا ہے ہاں یہ تو ٹھیک ہے کیونکہ یہ ان کے اندر ایجنسی ہے یا یہ اپنے مرضی سے کر رہی ہیں یا یہ جو ہے انہوں نے، اور کچھ لوگوں کو وہ ایکسیپٹنس نہیں ملتی اور ان کو جو ہے وہ مختلف قسم کے القاب سے نوازا جاتا ہے. یہ میرا مقصد تھا کہ میں اس میں جتنا یہ پرچہ سارا شگفتہ کے بارے میں ہے اتنا ہی ہمارے بارے میں کہ ہم اپنے گریبان میں جھانکیں اور ہم کس قسم کی سیاست کرنا چاہتے ہیں، اور آزادی کے بارے میں چاہے وہ آزادی نسواں ہو یا لبریشن ہو یا کلاس پالیٹکس ہو، اس میں ہم کس قسم کی چیزیں، ایک طرح کا انٹروسپیکٹیو ریفلیکشن تھا اپنی سیاست کے اوپر. تو یہ ان کی مثال لے کر میں یہ چاہ رہا تھا کہ میں اپنے اوپر، آپ کے اوپر کسی اور کے اوپر نہیں، میں اپنے اوپر اگر میں دعوے کرتا ہوں تو یہ کیا قسم ہوتا ہے، اٹس کائنڈ آف اے انٹروسپیکٹیو ریفلیکسو آرٹیکل میرے خیال میں. تو اس میں موازنے کا کوئی عنصر نہیں تھا. لیکن آپ بات صحیح کہہ رہی ہیں، تاریخی طور پہ یہ بہت مختلف ہستیاں تھیں اور ایک جو ہے وہ فکشن کی ہستی ہے، چاہے وہ آپ لکھنؤ میں جا کے ان کا گھر بھی دیکھ لیں، یہ بھی دیکھ لیں، لیکن بنیادی طور پہ اٹس فینٹیسی. اینڈ اٹس اے فینٹیسی کو اور فکشن کو پرکھنے کا بہت مختلف جو ہے وہ ہوتا ہے، اس کے معیار بہت مختلف ہوتے ہیں بنسبت یہ کہ جو آپ کی ایک کردار جیتی جاگتی ہستی ہوتی ہے، اس کے اپنے کانٹرڈکشنز اور اپنے زندگی کے اپنے مسائل ہوتے ہیں. بہرحال میں اس تک رکھوں گا. آپ زیادہ صاحب آپ کچھ کہیں؟
جی زیادہ ہے نا صاحبہ.
جی میں یہ عرض کروں اسدر کہ آپ جو جس طرح ابھی گفتگو سامنے آئی ہے، ظاہر آپ کا پرچہ میں نے نہیں پڑھا ہے تو اس لیے پوری طرح میں کچھ کہہ بھی نہیں سکتی، لیکن یہ ہے کہ دیکھیے امراؤ جان بھی، جو امراؤ جان ہم تک مرزا ہادی رسوا کے ذریعے پہنچی ہیں، وہ ڈیرہ دارنی ہے.
وہ کیا ہے؟
ڈیرہ دارنی ہے وہ،
جی
ہے نا. یعنی وہ اس طرح نہیں ہے جیسے ابھی کہا گیا کہ وہ ہر رات ایک مرد کے ساتھ گزارتی تھی، ایسی بالکل بات نہیں ہے. اور یہ بھی ایک بہت بنیادی فرق ہے کہ ڈیرہ دارنی کون ہوتی تھی، بالا خانہ کیا ہوتا تھا، طوائف کیا ہوتی تھی. اچھا، اور جو سارہ شگفتہ کا ذکر ہے تو وہ بھی بڑی زیادتی کی بات ہے کہ سارہ کے جو اپنے کنفیوژنس تھے کچھ، اور کچھ ان کی پرابلمس تھیں، ان کو ہم لوگوں نے لکھنے والوں نے بہت سے ایکسپلائٹ کیا ہے. تو یہ ہماری
نہیں، یہی بات میں کہہ رہا ہوں. آپ کی بات
تو میں نے آپ کا چونکہ وہ نہیں پڑھا پرچہ، لیکن یہ فاطمہ کی بات درست ہے کہ محسوس یوں ہوتا ہے کہ فاطمہ سارہ کو اور امراؤ جان کو، کہ سارہ کو اور امراؤ جان کو موازنہ کیا جا رہا ہے. اور
رویے کی بات کی، موازنہ نہیں تھا، رویے کی بات کی، ہم جس طرح اس کو لیتے ہیں. اور دوسری بات یہ کہ آپ امراؤ جان کے حوالے سے بھی دیکھیے کہ امراؤ جان جب ہم تک پہنچتا ہے 2002-2003 میں، وہ ایک ٹی وی پروڈکشن کے حساب سے پہنچتا ہے. اس کے ایک پروڈیوسر ہیں.
دیکھیے میں آپ سے عرض کروں، نہیں ہم ناول کی بات کر رہے ہیں.
میں ناول کی بات
ناول کی بات نہیں کر رہی ہے، جیو
کی اسکرپٹ کی بات کر رہا ہوں.
جی،
اور جیو کی پروڈکشن کی بات کر رہا ہوں، میں ناول کی بات نہیں کر رہا تھا.
میں یہ کہنا چاہوں گا، میرا خیال ہے کہ یہ کیونکہ میں نے یہ پیپر پڑھا بھی ہے، سنا بھی ہے. ایک بات تو یہ کہ یہ امراؤ جان ناول یا امراؤ جان کی جو کوئی افسانوی شخصیت تھی اس کے بارے میں نہیں ہے، بلکہ امراؤ جان کو پی ٹی وی میں کس طرح کنسیو کیا گیا جیو پر، اور وہ اچھا ہے برا ہے کلچرل ریپرزنٹیٹیو ہے. ایک تو یہ بات ہو گئی. دوسرے اس پیپر میں سارہ شگفتہ کا حوالہ یہ آیا ہے کہ سارہ شگفتہ ایک شاعرہ کی حیثیت سے کس قسم کی پرابلمز اپنے پڑھنے والوں کو یا اپنے دیکھنے والوں کو، اپنے ملنے والوں کو پوز کرتی تھیں. وہ پرابلمز اس وجہ سے تھیں کہ ان کی شاعری غیر روایتی تھی، وہ بہت زیادہ رسمی نہیں تھی. کچھ یہ وجہ تھی کہ وہ اس طرح کلاسیکی تعلیم یا اس طرح اردو ادب میں بہراور نہیں تھیں. تو اس وجہ سے ان کو مختلف الزامات کے تحت ان کو برا بھلا کہا گیا. اور اب بھی جب یہ پیپر پڑھا گیا تھا تو مجھے یاد ہے اس پر یہ اعتراض ہوا کہ شاعرہ ہی نہیں ہے، آپ نے ان کی شاعری کا ذکر کیسے کر دیا. تو ایک کس طرح سے ریجیکٹ کیا جاتا ہے، کس طرح سے دیکھا جاتا ہے. تو اس شاعری کے ریسیپشن اور یہ شاعری ہم تک کس طرح پہنچتی ہے، یہ پیپر اس کے بارے میں ہے.
جی اور بنیادی تو ہاں بالکل آپ نہیں، میں یہ کہہ رہا ہوں کہ ایک تو بالکل صحیح کہہ رہے ہیں، اور نہیں آپ کہیں میں تو لکھ چکا ہوں.
نہیں، I just wanted to say that this is exactly point which is taken up in one section of the book, which is called Celebrating Women, that right from the time of 47, the way women have been looked towards, especially women who've been related to the arts, there is a certain attitude, and the first thing if somebody does not appreciate that particular art, is to put that woman down by moralizing on her character. And this is what one really takes strong objection to, and one wants to actually celebrate those women who've been part of our culture, been part of our heritage, part of the city that is Karachi, which we are constantly wanting to celebrate and bring back to a normal, peaceful life.
ये कोई सारा शगुफ्ता की हतमी मतलब उनकी कोई सवान उम्र ही नहीं है, बट इस किताब के हवाले से और इस कॉन्फ्रेंस के हवाले से उनका इसमें शामिल, उनकी आवाज़, उनके बारे में कुछ कहना ज़रूरी था, क्योंकि हम वुमेन एंड जेंडर एंड परफॉर्मेंस के हर पहलू पे कुछ ना कुछ कहना चाह रहे थे। तो उसमें उस हवाले से यहाँ पर उनका शामिल होना, अब शीमा और आसिफ ने एग्री किया, और जो मैंने लिखा वो इनके सामने था कि ये भी होना चाहिए। इसलिए नहीं कि मुझे कोई इसमें हतमी राय है या ये अच्छी हैं या बुरी हैं, हमारे यहाँ तो ब्लैक एंड वाइट सिलसिला होता है, तो वो जो कुछ भी मुबहम बात हुई है वो उसमें, लेकिन Bahral, it was also in the context of the book.
Kamran, that actually Sara Shagufta was very much part of Tehreek-e-Islam. When we started it, she used to read a poetry out to a lot of the women who would get together to take this movement forward. So I feel that she is one of the women that I identify with, and I think her poetry, whatever people have views about her poetry is another aspect, but she was an absolutely amazing, very free-thinking, very courageous woman who lived in Karachi.
It reminds me, since well, the time is up. I have been told twice to,
well, I just wanted to say she reminded me, I didn't know about her until I read, so it was really interesting. Edna St. Vincent Millay was a similar figure who was ignored because of her promiscuousness and
right.
Sylvia
Yeah.
A number of women poets.
So thank you to the panel. Thank you very much, and we hope that you will. What did you say, Kamran? Buy the book. Pick up the book. Thank you.
No, Sylvia is because of the torture.